speaker is Roger Urce. He's going to be talking to you about the Japanese colonial issues for Taiwan.
Good morning. Okay. Japan came to have control over Formosa, called at the time now Taiwan, as a result of the First Sino-Japanese War. The war began in earnest in 1894 and lasted only a few months. Prior, Japan and China had been at odds for a number of years, okay, mainly over the Korean peninsula. China had exercised sovereignty over the peninsula, feeling it was part of their country. Japan had been trading with Korea and had maintained a delegation there since 1884. Needless to say, they felt that they had some claim to the land anyway. Some pro-Japanese forces, reformers, they attempted to overthrow the pro-Chinese government in Korea, resulting in some conflict, which was eventually settled by the Qing dynasty in favor of China. A number of incidents in succeeding years further inflamed these relationships. In 1885, a coup supported by pro-Japanese reformers attempted to take over the China-backed government. A number of Chinese were killed, which resulted in both China and Japan sending expeditionary forces to the peninsula. Okay? They wanted to avoid conflict, so they entered into an agreement called the Tientsin Convention, and not to send troops, and if either one of them should send troops, it would be tantamount to a declaration of war. In 1894, a young man named Kim Ok-gyeon, a pro-Japanese reformer, he was living in Shanghai. He was assassinated by the Chinese. And to further inflame matters, they took his body to Korea, where they mutilated it, put it on display. Needless to say, the Japanese were more than outraged. Okay. A peasant revolt in that same year against the Korean government was put down. China sent troops in violation of the agreement. Japan said, no, I don't think so. The war was now on. Actual fighting only lasted a short time. The Japanese Navy far exceeded the capabilities of the Chinese Navy, and they took care of them in rather quick order. There was some fighting on the peninsula itself, in and around Seoul, and Pyongyang, again, resulted in victories by the Chinese. The Chinese Empress Cixi, also known as the Dragon Lady, who was the Empress of China at the time, realized that this was a lost cause, so she sued for peace. This resulted in the Treaty of Shimonoseki. Okay? The treaty had a number of main parts which were very favorable, obviously, to Japan, and not surprisingly, not very favorable to the Chinese. First, China was to recognize the full and complete independence of Korea. China was to cede to Japan full sovereignty of Formosa, Taiwan, the Pescadores Islands, also called Penghu, which are located to the west of Taiwan, between Taiwan and the mainland, and the eastern portion of the Alodong Peninsula to include Port Arthur. The Port Arthur ceding was later rescinded with the intervention of Russia, France, and Germany, which left Port Arthur to the Russians for use as a naval base. China agrees to pay Japan a sum of 200 million taels, which is equivalent to 7.5 million kilograms, 16.5 million pounds of silver. Now, this is according to my research, but according to some conversations with Bowling, there was some gold involved also. But in order to meet the payment requirements, China was kind of broke. They were forced to sell bonds, and the bonds were sold in the United Kingdom. China was to open a number of its trading ports and granted most favored nation status to Japan for the purpose of foreign trade. So as you can see, Japan made out very, very well. Okay? Japanese occupation of Taiwan was met with a lot of resistance. Pro-Qing dynasty officials declared independence from China and wanted to form the Republic of Formosa. Japanese met these guerrilla uprisings with a lot of force, and they needed to maintain a large military presence on the island to keep it under their control. Resistance to the Japanese continued until 1915 and culminated in an armed resistance which was harshly put down. Japanese maintained control of the resistance groups by political manipulation, which was very common, okay? And they wanted to try to make Taiwan a modern colony by improving the infrastructure so that Japan could use the raw materials from Taiwan for use in the home country. They also wanted Taiwan for military purposes. Its strategic location just south of the main islands of Japan and out into the Pacific later proved to be very beneficial the Second World War. Okay? This plan continued through the 1930s. Now we go to Smith-Matravers, Chinese banknotes, and I'll quote it. The Japanese administered Bank of Taiwan began note issues in 1898. These notes are undated and in general do not appear to have been issued in a series, although it is possible to arrive at a rough approximation of a series. I don't necessarily agree with that because when we see the notes, it looks like they were issued in some kind of planned order. The first issues consisted of silver issued notes, backed by silver. Okay, and let me point out something here which is very confusing. We're talking about a note that was issued, or notes that would be issued in 1904 when we come up, but the catalog number is going to be 1912 in the standard catalog. So it gets a little confusing with the date and the PIC number. Okay? The first issue, as we can see by oops, what did I do? Up at the top is come on now, is a 1 yen silver issue. We've got the PIC number. The B number is from the banknote book. And the date is the date it was issued. Okay? This first issue is similar to the others in that it is written in both Japanese and English. We have here, these characters represent the Bank of Taiwan. We have two cockerels, the denomination in the middle, which states 1 silver note. This again is the Bank of Taiwan, and we can see down here, between the dragons, we can see down here, Taiwan B for Bank, BK for Bank Limited. Okay, this one's a specimen, as you can see by the red characters. Okay, the back of the note, it's kind of a poor example, but you can see it's in orange. And again, we have the conversion clause in Chinese, the Bank of Taiwan, and the conversion clause in English, 1 yen in silver on the back. And I'll get to this. This is courtesy of Joe Bowling, as were a number of the photos and scans. All right. The second issue was a 5 yen issued, as we see, in December of 1899. We again have the denominations in the corners. Again, we have a specimen in English and in Chinese, 5 yen silver note, the cockerels, the dragons, the Bank of Taiwan, and again, the same legend on the bottom. Okay? Next one we're going to talk about is the back of the silver. They changed it around a little bit from the 1. Now we have the conversion clause up here in Chinese, down here in English, and 5 yen again in silver at the bottom, and the denominations up at the top. The next of the silver issues is the 10. Another specimen. Basically the same design on the face, the same nomenclature, the denominations, the Chinese characters, the cockerels and the dragons. The back changes a little bit. Again, here's your conversion clause, the two languages. Now we have the denominations on either side in numerals, and a little bit fancier at the bottom in English. Okay? The 50 yen is the next issue, and as you notice, as the denominations get higher, the size gets a little bit bigger. Again, this is a specimen, and basically everything's the same as we've discussed before, the back with the conversion clause back and forth. Okay, in 1903, silver began to fluctuate. So there became a concern by the bank that they would experience problems. So what they did, rather than face a potential destruction of their financial organization, they decided to go to gold. Now, I was able to get some information from a book, and I won't even try to pronounce the Japanese title, but it's Japanese Currency Illustrated. It's provided by Joe Bowling, and it has, well, it's mostly in Japanese, but it does have some English text in it, and it's put out by the Bank of Japan. It comes in a number of volumes, and we use volumes 8 and 9 to put some of this together, and it covers the whole myriad of Japanese issued currency. Okay? Very rare and informative book. Okay, so they decided to back them in gold now. So there were 3 issues. So we're back again. This is a specimen, and this was courtesy of Owen Linsmeyer from the banknote book. It's gold. We're getting a little fancier. You can see the gold underprint here. We have, again, the same basic design, Bank of Taiwan Limited, the denomination. Instead of saying 1 gold note yen, they eliminate the word note. It's just 1 yen gold. Okay, again, the Bank of Taiwan here in English. It's a specimen, as you see by the zeros and the overstamps. The back is fairly plain. The conversion clause, the denomination, nice big 1, and now it's in English, backed by gold. Okay? The second of the issues, and again, as the denomination gets higher, the note gets a little bit larger. Now we have a gold back. The front is basically the same. Again, it's a specimen, and the design on the back is very similar to that of the 1, except as I indicated, we've got a goldish or orange back. Okay, and the third issue is a 10 yen, and again, another specimen as we see. The front the same, we've got cockles, we've got dragons, we've got Chinese characters, and they changed the back a little bit, and they put the denomination in English numerals and in Chinese, a little bit fancier, a little bit more scroll work, a little bit more engraving. All of these notes, by the way, are engraved, and none of them bear any serial numbers or dates of issue. They're not dated. Okay? And the last, now, we get into the 1920s. And what we were experiencing is a basic shortage of coinage. So what they did as a result of World War I, they needed to come up with some small change. And this was one of the printed notes, 50 sen, from the homeland of Japan. This is a series of 3, and if you like small denomination notes, it's a nice little set, and it's not too prohibitive to buy. But what they did on Taiwan was something a little bit different. They come up with what they called emergency postage stamp subsidiary coinage. All right? And what they did was they took stamps from the Tazawa issue, denominated in cent, and put them in a booklet. And the first issue from 1917 shows the stamp on a colored background with the block here, and the back, the circle, and the description of the purpose of the note. Here's the front and the back of the booklet. Here's the whole booklet. Now, one edge is rouletted because you tear them out, and here's the cover of the booklet. And if you look here, this is the logo of the post office. Okay? So we were issued in, this is the 5-cent issue of 1917. Okay, you notice we have a 5-cent stamp. It's purplish on a blue background. The 10-cent issue, now we've got a little bit of red on the face, and we've got I'd say a purplish or a blackish stamp on an orange background, and the back is the same as the previous issue. And we go to the 50-cent. This is a little curious, okay, because you notice they did make a 25-cent, okay? So they could have used two 25s. Why, I wasn't able to find out, but the only thing I can theorize is these weren't available on Taiwan. They might have been available in Japan, but not on Taiwan. So what they did, 2020, 50. Okay? The issuing continued through 1918 with another issue, but by 1918, there was another issue of stamps from the Tazawa. If you go back and you look, the Tazawa Stamps of 1913, the first issue that was used on the 1917 issue of these postal notes, only came in issues of 4, 5, 20, and 25 cent. Okay, but the later issue came in different denominations. And as we can see, if you look, all right, too many things to pick up. Okay, here is the initial Tazawa issue, which is on the 5-cent denomination of 1918. But this is the later issue of 1914 to 1925, which was not available at the time. And this is a different issue, and it came in different denominations so that they didn't need to double anything up. Okay, and again, we have a stamp of a particular color on a particular background. So these were used as needed and until they were done. And they were also used, there's one issue for the occupation of Korea, when Japan occupied Korea. Now, as we go on, we're getting a little bit later on in the early part of the 20th century, we'll go back to paper issues. And I'll quote again from Japanese Currency Illustrated. In order to eliminate troubles in China markets emanating from complex and confused money systems there, the Bank of Taiwan issued a variety of 8 bills for use in the southern part of China. Now, if you remember, with Taiwan, we've got a number of ports here that were given, that China gave access to Japan for use as part of the treaty. So these notes, in addition to being used here, were also used in the mainland, the southern part, the coastal southern part of the mainland. And from Smith with Travers in Chinese banknotes, I'll quote, the Bank of the Bank of Taiwan also operated in mainland China treaty ports as a foreign bank, issuing notes and backing Japanese-oriented enterprises. SM goes on to say, branches were maintained in the major centers, but the bank was most conspicuous in the less important cities of Fuzhou, Amoy, and Swatow, all more or less directly across the Taiwan Strait from Taiwan. Earlier issues from the Bank of Taiwan, the silver and gold issues, also found their way over here, okay? Some with overstamps. One I'm aware of with an overstamp from Amoy, okay? There were 8 denominations issued from 1 to 100 yen. The first, and now we're back to a horizontal pattern, issued in September 1915, 1 yen. That's the P number, P1921. B again is from Owen Linsmeyer, who was kind enough to provide the scan. We have the 1 yen note. We see the denomination here has a block number, has a serial number, has a shrine, okay, and a galoosh with Bank of Taiwan. This is the Bank of Taiwan seal, and you'll see this on a number of notes as we go on. The back of the note, the denomination, English Chinese. This is also a lighthouse on the southern tip of Taiwan. And what the Japanese did was, in order to make the bank issues more palatable for the occupied country, they used local themes, local vignettes. They also did that in the Philippines with Japanese invasion money, which came out with the Bank of Rizal monument on it. Okay? They felt, and it's a good propaganda move. You see, you're being occupied, but you see money with something that belongs to you, you're more likely to have faith in it and use it. Okay? The Grand Shrine is the Grand Shrine in Taipei. Okay? And it's called the Taiwan Jinja Shrine. And it was originally a Japanese Shinto shrine, originally built in 01 to enshrine Prince Yoshihisa, a member of the Japanese royal family, by marriage, I believe. Okay? The shrine just happened to be destroyed in a plane crash in 1944. The back shows the lighthouse's Oluwan Point, which, as I indicated, is the southernmost point on Taiwan. These notes that I'm going to talk about are all watermarked with the denomination in Japanese characters. And if you look here, this is the logo of the Bank of Taiwan, which follows through on all of the notes from here on, with one exception, which we'll get to. Okay? Next we have, well, here's two images of the Grand Shrine. Here's a long view, and here's a head-on view through the main gate. Okay? And here is a modern picture of the lighthouse. Okay. The 5 yen, again, very similar. Yeah, okay. It would be nice if I had to write back, huh? Okay, but anyway, serial number, block number, here's a 5. The back looks very, very similar, but it says 5 here and it doesn't say 1. Okay? Okay. The 10 yen, again, very similar in design. The colors change, the size gets a little bit bigger. Again, block and serial. Okay. 50 yen, a little bit fancier. Now we have a specimen. See the perforations, and this one's bigger, more score work and fancy on the back. And on we go. Now, in 1930, an indigenous group of Taiwanese held a major uprising protesting the Japanese occupation. This resulted in the death of over 100 Japanese. The uprising was put down extremely brutally, and this did not go unnoticed by the rest of the world, and they protested against the Japanese. The Japanese were criticized quite a bit. So the Japanese decided to change their tactic, and it resulted in the way they governed Taiwan. They let a limited democracy form. Okay? They introduced the Taiwanese into the government. They encouraged the development of industrial output, basically to fulfill the needs of the Japanese military. Okay, because we're talking about 1930 and what happens in 1931. Okay? Tensions, however, continued to grow. Okay? So, in 1937, famous incident which kicked off the second Sino-Taiwanese War, China War, the Marco Polo Bridge. Okay? There was an incident probably orchestrated by the Japanese, and that started the war. All right? This was a prelude to the Second World War, the war in the Pacific, which 4 years later began in 1941. So now, after World War I, The gold embargo was lifted by many countries, but Japan wasn't part of this trend. In January of 1930, Japan lifted its embargo and the exchange rate was again set at the old rate of 100 yen to US $49.846. So 1 yen equaled approximately 750 milligrams of gold, all right? Despite the lifting of the embargo, the worldwide depression decreased profits and put Japan and everybody else in the world into financial difficulty. Great Britain revived the gold standard in 1931, and in that same year, Japanese went off the gold standard for the final time. Many of our trading partners, including the United States, we went off the gold standard when Roosevelt came in. So there was no sense in trading in gold because there was nothing to do with it. So why back the money in it? All right? The banknotes in the next series were released beginning in 1933 and ending in 1937, except for the second printing of the 1 yen piece, and have a connection to World War II. Therefore, they're not only listed in PIC, Standard Catalog, the banknote book, but also in World War II remembered, and they're identified by SB numbers, Schwan Bowling, all right? The dates refer to the issue date of the note, and again, the notes are not dated, okay? The whole group was printed by the Greater Japan Government Cabinet Printing Bureau, all right? This is the first one in the issue, the 1 yen. Again, we're looking at the shrine. We're looking at the denomination. This has a block number, has a serial number, okay? The Bank of Taiwan. The back, another view of the Lighthouse, okay? The bank logo, the denomination, okay? This is the A version. All right, the note also comes in a B version. And this one, the release date was 1944, a number of years later. And you notice the difference. The coloring is a little bit better. The printing is a little bit less than it was for the original issue. The big difference is there's no serial, just the block number. Okay? Now, I'll point out that Schwan Bowling calls this a block number. The banknote book calls it a series number. But it's the same number. Okay? The block numbers on the B issue run from 93 to 104. The block numbers on the A issue start with 1 and run through 93. So with 93 blocks and 900,000 notes per block, there were over 83.6 million notes printed for the serialized version of the note, and over 12.6 million pieces issued for the block number version of the note. Okay? This one is scarcer than the other one. Okay. Next in the series is a 5 yen. Again, we see serial and block, the denomination, the shrine, another view of the lighthouse, the logo, okay, and the denominations. This issue was October 1934. The 10 yen's a little fancier. Color is gold. My opinion, a prettier note. A little bit more scroll work, more ornamentation, block and serial. Okay, you got a wreath here, denomination, the seal, the shrine, the lighthouse, the bank logo, the denomination. Okay. This particular note is engraved. Okay. A number of them aren't, as we'll see as we go along. And the watermarks on these notes are, this particular issue consists of a pineapple, some flowers, and the words 100 yen in English. Okay? 10, I'm sorry. Did I say 100? That's the next one. Yeah. Okay. Here's your 100. Okay, again, we have a little bit more with the shrine, the denomination, and the same basic pattern for the back with the lighthouse. Okay. In 1941, Japan had taken just about all of China, and they now started their quest to take over the Pacific. Okay? Taiwan was developed as a military base, and this is basically the area that they ultimately controlled in 1942, as you see, pretty good part of the Pacific Ocean. Okay? And what they did was they developed Taiwan into a military base. They conducted jungle training exercises. The Navy operated from ports in Taiwan. And Taiwanese and native Aboriginal people were encouraged to join the Japanese Army. And between 1937 and the end of World War II in 1945, over 3,000 were killed in action. Okay? And they're memorialized in Japan. The standard catalog in World War II, remembered, lists 5- and 10-year notes issued in July of 1944. The banknote book has them introduced in 42 and 43, respectively. Okay? The first of these issues is a 5 yen. Again, 1944. And the theme is the same. The banknote book classifies them as the Shrine Lighthouse series. And, you know, fine. So, got a purple face, green background, black around. The back, again, a different view of the lighthouse now, a little bit more prominent. Okay? And what we see here is a golden kite. The golden kite, according to Swan Bowling, is a symbol of military fortune in Japanese folklore. So it's considered good luck in battle. Okay? Next issue is here's a pretty nice view of a kite. Okay, it looks a hawk-like bird, kind of fearsome if it's coming at you, I would think. Okay. Next we have a 10 yen piece. We're again along the same lines with the shrine, a different view this time. Here we have a serial in a block, and the back, the logo, the denomination, and a different oval containing the bird. Okay? The watermark is a wreath on this note and with the words 10 yen. Okay? There's another 10 yen piece. This is 1930B, and this was issued in February of 1945. And if you remember the former A and B issues, pick number 1925 A and B, this one, you'll notice, only has a block number. Okay? It's the same. The shading is a little bit different. But again, by 1945, they weren't so much concerned with printing banknotes. They were concerned about defending themselves. So they didn't take the effort that they would have made initially. Okay, the watermark on this is the Bank of Taiwan logo. In 1943, U.S. forces began to move closer and closer to Japan, moving west in the Pacific, and military and industrial targets on Taiwan were the target of U.S. Army Air Forces. The last issue by the Bank of Japan under Japanese control consisted of 4 notes issued in 1945. The war was not going well for the Japanese, okay? In March of 45, after some pretty fierce combat, U.S. Marines took Iwo Jima. Iwo Jima is only about 750 miles from the Japanese homeland, and the Japanese considered Iwo Jima as part of their homeland, okay? And again, according to SB, note production from the Bank of Japan was almost destroyed, and currency requirements were growing. So the last 2 homeland issues in 1945 consisted of a 10 and 100 yuan notes, which were completely lithographed and represented the last gasp efforts of the Printing Bureau. Here's an an image of the 10 yen issued for the home. Rather plain, with a block number, and it's probably Joe's favorite block number, if I'm not mistaken, okay? Bank of Taiwan logo. I'm sorry, it's not Bank of Taiwan. The Homeland issue, very plain note, okay? It was also 100. Okay, now we go on to Taiwan issue. This is the July 1945 issue, 10-1 issue for the Bank of Taiwan on occupied Taiwan. And if you notice, that's about a month before the Japanese actually surrendered. Again, it's a fairly plain note. There's no serial numbers. Here you have the Bank of Taiwan number. The back, again, the Bank of Taiwan, the denomination, nothing in the corners. And we have our famous golden kite flying off at you. Okay? Now, this particular one, 2507 in SB, there's a crude printed counterfeit for circulation that has no watermark, and it is known to exist. I couldn't find a scan of it, so, okay. The next one is 100 yen, and this was issued 21 August 1945, okay? And this particular issue, okay, it was issued about the time they surrendered. What was the day they surrendered, Joe? 25? 25 August?
The signing of the
Peace was 2 September. Yeah, okay. So the issue date was after the surrender, all right? And this is the second of 2 notes issued in 45, and according to research, was locally produced, all right? Again, it's the shrine, the Lighthouse denominations is where we still see the bank logo, okay? There's 2 varieties, one on buff-colored paper, that's block numbers or series numbers 1 and 2, with an introduction date of 1942, as we mentioned earlier. The other one is on gray paper, Bank of Taiwan logos, series 2 to 7, and that was introduced in 45. This is the earlier issue, as you can see by the block number, okay? This was printed by the Cabinet Printing Bureau. All right, now, there are 3 varieties of this note, okay? The first, and we're going by Schwann bowling numbers, the face colors are bright, light green, and purple. The paper is off-white, the block numbers are 1, 2, and there's no watermark. The second variety, it's the same colors, but they're dull. Blocks 2 and 5 are observed. The back is purple on gray paper with Bank of Taiwan as the watermark. And the third variety is dull face colors of green and gray with the back now purplish gray, often with blue or green splotches. It's printed on gray paper. Blocks 6 and 7 are observed. And I'll quote again from Swan Bowling. Although reported by the Bank of Taiwan to have been issued on the date shown, 21 August 1945, number 2508 is also reported to have circulated in 1942. And the banknote book makes similar comments. 2508A was apparently printed first. It may have been withheld from circulation until later because of a lack of a watermark. Okay? Japan, at this point, was in big trouble militarily, and the homeland was under actual attack by the Allies. So focus more on preservation, as I said before, and not on printing banknotes. Okay? Thousand yen, again, issued after they decided they were going to surrender. This note was printed in 1942 and originally intended for use in Japan, but was not issued and placed in storage. Okay? It is listed in the standard catalog as P45 and B337 in the banknote book. The text is all in Japanese, and again, the release date is after the Japanese announced their surrender. The face color, as you see, is yellow, gold, and black. The Takebi Shrine, located in Atsu, which is in central Japan, is at the left. Okay? The shrine dates back to the 2nd century and was established by Emperor Kyoto after the death of his son, Yamato Keikaru, whose vignette is here. The differences between the note originally printed for Japan and the one issued for use in the occupation of Taiwan is seen on the back. Okay. Comparing the two. This is the Bank of Japan issue. Okay? This is the one issued for Taiwan. The seal of the Bank of Taiwan, you have 4 vertical characters here. Okay? These translate to the Bank of Taiwan. And you've got 4 characters here in a small block, and they translate to Joint Stock Company. And notice there was no Bank of Taiwan logo at the top. Here, obviously it wouldn't be there because that's a homeland issue.
That's the Bank of Japan logo.
Okay, thank you. Okay. The last note we're going to talk about is another 1,000 yen. And this one is known in specimen form. This was the best scan I can get. If you look at the scan in Chuan Bowling, it's obviously the same note, but I imagine at the time they were not able to get a decent scan. This came to me on the internet, actually. Okay? And again, it's the last note in the occupation series. It's a specimen. Here's the shrine. And on the back, this is different from all the other notes. Okay? This is Mount Yu, also known as Mount Nitaka, which is the highest point in Taiwan. Again, they're using local imagery. It was late in the war, and according to Chuan Bowling, there was no transportation available to get the note from Japan to Taiwan. They were never issued, and consequently, they're rare. And as far as I'm aware, only block number 1 was issued.
The mountain is pronounced Niitaka, and the code message for launching the attack on Pearl Harbor was climb Mount Niitaka.
Yeah. Okay. Just what I would have said. I didn't write it down, but I was going to say it. But thank you. Okay. Okay. So in summing up, Japan surrendered on 15 August 45. They said they were going to surrender. They did. The fighting stopped for most of them, except for a few who hung on. And 10, 15 years later, they still came out of the jungles. Okay? And as far as Taiwan was concerned, the Japanese military leaders, as well as the civilians, the Japanese civilians, were expelled and returned to Japan. But over 150 Taiwanese who were members of the Japanese military were found guilty of war crimes. Over 20 were executed. Okay? The Bank of Taiwan was placed under the control of the Central Bank of China. In 1946, the currency changed from yen to won. But since the Chinese character for yen also reads as won, there was no need to change the notes. New notes began to replace them in the fall of 1946. The existing notes remained in circulation until January 47, when they were withdrawn. Okay, so in closing, I just want to thank Owen Linsmeyer, the banknote book. He provided quite a number of scans. He was very kind to do so. Thomas and Ann Schluskowitz of ATS Notes also provided a number of scans, as did Joe Bowling, who provided me with access to the Japanese Currency Illustrated book. So there we are. And thank you. Now, okay, you can applaud. All right. What we typically have done in our presentations previously is have a souvenir card. Okay, and this year's card depicts the 1 yen gold issue of 1904. All right? And I know certain people collect certain numbers, so if you have an interest, help yourself to a card. And what was it you collect, Joe? I forgot. What number was that?
You mentioned it.
I did. And I hope somebody took it. No. Okay. So please, come on up and help yourself.